Usually when you read like a historical biography, there's a pretty predictable rhythm to it.
Right. Yeah, you expect a nice chronological timeline.
Exactly. You expect events, some political maneuvering, maybe a few philosophical speeches here and there. But imagine reading a biography of an ancient teacher, and right in the middle of a chapter about his public speaking tour, the guy just, well, he wakes up from a nap, tells a literal hurricane to sit down and shut up, and the hurricane actually complies.
It completely breaks the mold.
It shatters every category of historical literature. And as we start our deep dive into this text today, I just want to welcome you to the show and offer a divine blessing for your day and the week ahead. May you find, profound clarity and strength in the things we're about to uncover.
I love that. And it really is just a remarkable piece of literature to unpack because the text we're looking at today doesn't read like a standard historical account at all.
No, not even a...
It reads like this systematic escalation of authority. You go from reading about a controversial philosopher to reading about someone who wields this terrifying absolute command over the very fabric of reality.
And that's really the core mission of our deep dive today for you listening. We're unpacking Chapter 8 of the Gospel of Luke. We're pulling insights from two highly detailed sources, the Holman and the NAA Study Bibles.
Two fantastic resources, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. And what's wild is that Luke isn't just giving us a random assortment of travel logs here. He's building a highly structured, airtight argument about identity. We're looking at a rapid-fire sequence where this teacher completely shatters first-century social norms, kind of obfuscates his own teachings, and demonstrates total dominance over nature, the supernatural, and, ultimately death itself.
Yeah, and the narrative really kicks off by establishing the sheer unconventionality of his entire operation. So the text outlines Jesus traveling from town to town preaching, but the focus immediately shifts to the people who are actually funding this grassroots movement.
Which is so interesting.
Right, because in the cultural context of first-century Judea, a traveling rabbi would normally rely on the hospitality of the towns he visited, or maybe, some wealthy male patrons.
Sure.
But here, the sources highlight that he is accompanied by and literally financially supported out of the private means of a core group of women.
I really want to look closely at the socioeconomic makeup of that group because it is staggering. I mean, on one end of the spectrum, you have Mary Magdalene, a woman who had been cured of severe demonic possession. And on the other end, you have Joanna.
Ah, yeah, Joanna.
The text just casually mentioned she's a wife of Chusa. And the Holman notes clarify that Chusa was the procurator, essentially the chief financial officer or steward for Herod Antipas.
Herod Antipas being the tetrarch,
Yeah.
right? So the regional puppet king appointed by Rome to rule Galilee.
Yes.
This is the exact same government authority who is largely hostile to any kind of populist messianic movement because, it threatens their very fragile political peace with Rome.
Right, so let me put this into a modern context so the sheer weight of this detail really lands for you listening. Imagine a revolutionary grassroots movement that is actively challenging the establishment.
Okay.
Now imagine that movement is being secretly bankrolled by the spouse of the White House chief of staff.
Wow. Yeah, the political liability there is massive.
It's insane. It proves that the gospel was simultaneously reaching the absolute highest echelons of the political elite and the most marginalized outcasts in society.
It really is a radical departure from the status quo. It demonstrates this authority that just ignores established social hierarchies. But since you brought up Mary Magdalene, we should probably clarify a massive historical misconception that both of our study Bible sources spend considerable time correcting.
Oh, yeah. Because I always grew up hearing the assumption that Mary Magdalene was the anonymous prostitute mentioned in the previous chapter, like Luke 7.
Right, yeah.
They're constantly treated as the exact same person in pop culture.
And there is zero biblical evidence for that conflation. The NWA study notes are completely unequivocal here. The text of Luke only introduces her as a woman from whom 7 demons had gone out.
That's it.
That's it. The conflation with the penitent sex worker from chapter 7 didn't happen until much, much later. It was later ecclesiastical writers and these second-century heterodox texts.
Which are what, exactly?
Well, they were essentially fringe, non-mainstream writings that tried to reinterpret early Christian history. They merged these figures together to promote a skewed, more dramatic narrative. But historically and biblically, she was simply a woman who suffered severe spiritual torment, was healed, and responded by bankrolling the ministry.
It is wild how a narrative can get twisted over a couple of millennia and just become accepted fact.
It really is.
So we have this politically and socially dangerous entourage funding the operation, which frees Jesus up to teach these massive crowds. And this brings us to the pedagogy of parables. Everyone listening probably knows the Sunday school version of the parable of the sower.
Oh,
A farmer throws seed. Some hits a path and birds eat it, some hits rocks and dies in the sun, some gets choked by thorns, and some hits good soil and grows.
right. The agricultural imagery is very straightforward. The seed is the word of God. The different soils represent the psychological and spiritual receptivity of the human heart,
Right.
ranging from immediate satanic theft on the path to superficial emotional joy on the rocks that just can't survive testing. Then you have the thorns, where the anxieties and riches of life distract the listener.
Okay, let's unpack this, because
Yeah.
I understand the mechanics of the metaphor, but I have a major issue with the stated strategy here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Isn't a teacher's primary objective to be easily understood by the widest possible audience? I mean, you have a massive crowd hanging on your every word,
Yeah.
waiting for revolutionary instruction. Why use agricultural riddles? Why not just give them a clear, bullet-pointed manifesto of theological truths?
Well, what's fascinating here is that when the disciples pull him aside and ask that exact question, his answer reveals the dual purpose of parables.
Which,
He tells them that the parables are actually designed to reveal the mysteries of the kingdom of God to those with open hearts, but to actively conceal them from the indifferent or the hostile.
oh wow.
It acts as a spiritual filter. You have to remember, in a volatile political climate, speaking plainly about a new kingdom would have led to immediate arrest for sedition. So the parables force the listener to lean in, to actively grapple with the meaning.
So it demands participation. You can't just be a passive consumer of the information. You have to do the intellectual and spiritual work to decode it.
Exactly.
But to say the goal is partially so that, quote, seeing they may not see, that feels incredibly harsh. It feels exclusionary.
It does feel harsh to our modern sensibilities, for sure. But the text frames it as a mechanism of justice, protecting sacred truth from those who only want to mock or exploit it. And we have to look closely at the yield of that good soil to really understand the stakes here.
Right, the hundredfold return.
Yes. The text says the good soil yields 100-fold return. Now, to a first-century agrarian crowd, that number isn't just a sign of a good harvest. It is a statistical impossibility.
Really?
Yeah, a farmer in that region might expect a return of 5 to 10 times what they sowed on an excellent year. 100-fold yield implies a miraculous, supernatural intervention. It signals that when this specific teaching takes root, the results defy natural limitations.
And he immediately follows this with the parable of the lamp, right? You don't light a lamp and shove it under bed. You put it on a stand. So the filter of the parables, the hiddenness, it's temporary.
Exactly.
The ultimate goal isn't to create a secret society. The truth is meant to be brought into the light eventually.
The concealment serves the immediate environment, but the revelation is inevitable. And the requirement to actively do something with this revelation brings us to one of the most culturally disruptive moments in the entire chapter.
Oh, right. When Jesus' mother and brothers arrive. But they can't physically get to him through this massive crowd. So someone passes the message up like, hey, your family is outside wanting to see you. And Jesus uses this moment to publicly state, my mother and my brothers are those who hear the word of God and do it.
And the implications of that statement in a first-century Middle Eastern context, I mean, they just cannot be overstated.
Because this is a society built entirely on kinship. Your bloodline is your social security, your economic safety net, your legal defense. It's your entire identity.
Right.
To stand in front of a crowd and declare that biological ties are secondary to spiritual obedience is practically social suicide. He is completely tearing down the foundational DNA of ancient community and rebuilding it around himself.
He is asserting absolute authority over human social structures. And the narrative immediately pivots from asserting authority over the social order to asserting authority over the natural order.
The boat scene.
Yes, they get into a boat to cross the Sea of Galilee.
This scene is so vivid. The Greek text specifically notes a violent squall coming down through the mountains, which is a known meteorological phenomenon on that particular lake. The boat is actively taking on water. They are in imminent physical danger of drowning. And let's examine the psychology of the disciples here.
Yeah, let's look at that.
These aren't tourists. Many of them are seasoned, professional fishermen who have worked this specific body of water their entire lives. If they are panicking, the storm is legitimately lethal.
Right. And meanwhile, Jesus is asleep.
which is crazy.
It is. His ability to sleep through a life-threatening crisis demonstrates this profound, unwavering trust in God's sovereignty. The disciples wake him, literally screaming that they are perishing. And Jesus doesn't grab a bucket to help bail water.
No.
He speaks directly to the chaotic elements. He rebukes the wind and the raging waves, and the text notes an instantaneous total calm.
He tells a hurricane to sit down. But what fascinates me is the immediate emotional shift in the boat. The disciples go from being terrified of the deadly weather to being absolutely terrified of the man standing next to them.
The sources really highlight this transition. It goes from natural, survival-based fear to a profound, holy dread. Jesus asks them, "Where is your faith?" The implication is that if they truly comprehended who was in the boat, they wouldn't have feared the water at all.
Wow.
And the disciples turn to each other and ask, "Who is this, that he commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him?"
Because in their cultural and scriptural vocabulary, there's only one entity who commands the raging seas.
Exactly. Throughout the Old Testament Psalms, subduing the chaotic waters is an action strictly reserved for Yahweh. The disciples are staring at a human being exercising divine prerogative, and it just shatters their paradigm.
It sets up a terrifying logical progression. If he can rewrite social laws and he can casually override the laws of physics and meteorology with a spoken word, what happens when he crosses the lake and steps into a realm governed by supernatural chaos?
Well, they land in the region of the Gerasenes, or the Gadarenes, which is predominantly Gentile territory. And they're immediately confronted by a man who has been possessed by demons for a long time.
It's a dark scene.
Very. He is naked, isolated, and living among the tombs.
The imagery is just suffocating. He's steeped in death. The text details how the townspeople had tried to bind him with chains and shackles under guard, but he possessed this supernatural strength to shatter the iron and would be driven by the demon into the desolate desert. He is the ultimate outcast, entirely consumed by chaotic evil.
Right.
But the moment he sees Jesus, he falls down and screams, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me."
And the juxtaposition there is striking. The disciples who spend every day with him were just in the boat asking, "Who is this?" Yet the demonic realm recognizes his divine identity and absolute authority instantly.
Yeah.
There is no theological confusion on their part whatsoever.
None. So Jesus asked the man his name, and the demons answer, Legion. And the Holman study notes really dig into the linguistic weight of that answer. Legion isn't merely a synonym for many.
No, not at all.
In the first century, that specific word invokes the overwhelming dread of a Roman occupying army. A Roman legion was a military unit of up to 6,000 highly trained, ruthless soldiers.
It is a deliberate, terrifying analogy. This man's psyche hasn't just been troubled. It has been invaded, colonized, and occupied by a massive, organized military force of darkness. And this legion of demons begs Jesus not to send them into the abyss, which they recognize as the ultimate place of confinement and judgment for evil spirits.
Right.
Instead, they request to be sent into a massive herd of pigs feeding nearby.
And Jesus permits it. The demons enter the pigs, and the entire herd immediately stampedes down a steep cliff into the lake and drowns. Now, why the pigs? You mentioned earlier this is Gentile territory, which explains why there's a massive commercial swine operation.
Exactly.
Pigs were ceremonially unclean for Jews, so a Jewish community would never farm them.
Right. And the destruction of the pigs serves a critical narrative purpose here. It physically, tangibly proves the destructive, lethal reality of the demons. Without a host to torture, their innate nature drives them to immediate destruction. But equally important is the economic fallout. The loss of a herd that size is a catastrophic financial disaster for the local economy.
Which perfectly explains the reaction of the townspeople. The herdsmen run off, tell everyone what happened, and the locals come out to investigate. And they find the man who used to be a naked, screaming, chain-breaking terror sitting calmly at Jesus' feet, clothed and in his right mind.
Right, and sitting at the feet of a teacher was the formal, traditional posture of a disciple. The man has been completely socially and psychologically restored. But the townspeople's reaction exposes a pretty dark truth about human nature.
Yeah, the text explicitly states they were seized with great fear, and they asked Jesus to leave. They essentially say, "We see the miracle, but the cost of your presence is too high. Get out." They run a mental calculus and decide they value their economic stability and their predictable status quo far more than the miraculous salvation of a single human life.
It's tragic.
A restored, healthy man was somehow more threatening to their way of life than a demon-possessed monster in the graveyard.
It demonstrates the immense resistance of human systems to disruptive divine power. And Jesus complies with their request to leave. But as he boards the boat, the healed man begs to accompany him. And Jesus' response to this man is utterly fascinating when placed against the broader narrative of his ministry. He tells the man, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you."
But that feels like a massive contradiction. Up to this point, and even later this very chapter, Jesus constantly tells people to keep quiet about his miracles.
Yes, the messianic secret.
Right. But here, he explicitly commands this guy to launch a public relations campaign.
Well, it comes down to the political and cultural geography. This is the Decapolis, a Gentile region. They have no preconceived militaristic expectations of a Jewish Messiah. If this man preaches about a miraculous healer, it won't spark a premature armed rebellion against Rome.
Oh, that makes sense.
Jesus turns the ultimate traumatized outcast into the very first missionary to the Gentiles, leaving him behind as a living, breathing testament to grace in a region that just forcefully rejected him.
Incredible. So, forced out of Gentile territory,
Huh.
Jesus crosses back over the lake to the Jewish side. And waiting on the shore are two desperate, overlapping crises. Luke weaves these two stories together so tightly that you really can't understand one without the other.
It is a masterpiece of narrative intersection. As soon as he lands, Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue, a highly respected named religious elite, falls at his feet begging for help because his only daughter, who is about 12 years old, is dying.
So Jesus agrees to go, and the massive crowd is just crushing in on him as they move toward the house. Time is obviously running out. But right in the middle of this urgent, life-or-death sprint, the camera entirely shifts focus to an unnamed woman in the crowd, a woman who has suffered from a continuous hemorrhage for 12 years.
12 years of suffering.
And the sources note that Luke, writing from the perspective of a physician, emphasizes that she had spent her entire livelihood on doctors, yet no one could cure her.
And the medical tragedy is only half the story. Because of the nature of her bleeding, Levitical law dictates she is perpetually, ceremonially unclean. She is barred from the temple and the synagogue. Anyone she touches becomes unclean. She's lived in absolute social, religious, and physical isolation for over a decade.
Here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. The dramatic juxtaposition here is just brilliant. You have Jairus, powerful, named wealthy male, religiously elite, and you have this woman, unnamed, utterly destitute female, religiously ostracized. And they are inextricably linked by the number 12. The young girl has been alive for exactly as long as this woman has been slowly dying in the shadows.
Jesus becomes the focal point where these two completely opposite social extremes intersect. The woman believes that if she can just touch the fringe of his garment, she will be healed. She sneaks up behind him, touches the clothing, and the text says her bleeding stops instantly.
But then Jesus slams the brakes on the entire procession. He stops and demands, "Who touched me?"
Yeah.
Peter's completely baffled. He points out that hundreds of people are physically crushing against him. But Jesus insists, stating he perceived power go out from him. The woman realizes she's caught, comes forward trembling, falls down, and confesses in front of the entire crowd why she touched him and that she's healed.
I really want to examine his motivation for stopping here. Why force this terrified, vulnerable woman to publicly out herself, especially when every wasted second means Jairus' daughter moves closer to death?
Yeah, it seems almost callous.
It does seem that way.
I mean, if the goal was simply physical healing, she already had it. She could have slipped away into the crowd and lived a healthy life.
But if she had simply slipped away, she would only be physically well. Her community would still view her as cursed and unclean.
Oh.
By stopping the entire crowd, forcing a public declaration, and having Jesus himself verbally affirm her, calling her daughter and stating, "Your faith has made you well, go in peace." He provides an undeniable public exoneration. He restores her socially and religiously. He didn't just cure a disease, he handed a marginalized outcast her entire life back.
He refused to let her steal a miracle in the dark. He demanded to look her in the eye and restore her dignity. But the cost of that delay is devastating. While he's still speaking to her, someone arrives from Jairus' house with the worst possible news. "Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher anymore."
The finality of that statement is just crushing, but Jesus immediately counters the despair, telling Jairus, "Do not fear, only believe, and she will be well."
So they arrive at the house, and the professional mourners are already in full swing, weeping and wailing. Jesus tells them to stop, saying, "She is not dead, but sleeping." And the text says they literally laughed at him in derision. I mean, they are intimately familiar with death. They know a corpse when they see one.
And notice what he does. He removes the cynics from the environment. He only permits Peter, James, John, and the girl's parents to enter the room. This inner circle is about to witness an intimate subversion of the ultimate human limitation.
He takes the dead girl by the hand and simply calls out, "Child, arise." Her spirit returns, and she gets up immediately. And then he gives a very specific, almost mundane instruction. He tells them to get her something to eat.
It sounds like such a strange detail to include, right?
Yep.
But from an apologetic standpoint, meaning defending the historical truth of the claim, it is vital. By commanding them to give her food, he is proving this is a literal biological resurrection.
Right.
She is not a phantom, a spirit, or a collective hallucination. Phantoms do not metabolize food. She is a living, breathing, hungry 12-year-old girl whose physical life has been entirely rebooted.
And then he commands the parents to tell absolutely no one what just happened, which circles right back to my confusion earlier. He told the demoniac to go on a press tour, but he tells the parents of a resurrected child to keep it a secret.
Again, this is the crux of the messianic secret we discussed.
Hmm?
The demoniac was in Gentile territory. Here, they are deep in Jewish territory.
Okay.
If the masses hear that a man is casually reversing death, they will inevitably attempt to forcefully install him as a political king to lead a violent revolt against Rome. Widespread publicity of this specific miracle would actively derail the larger ultimate mission he is marching toward in Jerusalem.
When you pull back and look at the sheer density of chapter 8, the scope of the authority on display is just staggering. I mean, in one continuous narrative block, we see him dismantle rigid social and gender boundaries with his financial backers.
Yeah.
He redefines the fundamental nature of the family unit. He commands the chaotic weather of the natural world. He overpowers an occupying army of ancient supernatural evil, and he casually reverses the absolute finality of biological death.
It is a relentless, categorical dismantling of every force that threatens human flourishing. The biological, the meteorological, the sociological, and the terminal, they all unconditionally bow to his word.
It really forces us to reckon with the premise we started with. This is not the biography of a philosopher offering moral advice for a polite society. It's a confrontation with a power that breaks every framework we possess, which leaves you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over as you navigate your week.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the common thread weaving through all these diverse stories, from the wealthy Joanna in Herod's court to the outcast, naked demoniac in the tombs, from the panicked, seasoned fisherman in the storm to the grieving, desperate Jairus. The common denominator is an overwhelming crisis that forces them to decide who this man actually is.
The text demands a verdict.
It absolutely does. The storms of life are an absolute certainty. And when those crises hit your boat and the limits of your own authority are exposed, which of the four soils from the parable will you be? Will the word have enough root to weather the storm, or will it be washed away by the chaos?
That is the ultimate question the narrative leaves hanging in the air.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope digging into the mechanics and the history of this text sparks some profound new insights for you. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember, God blesses all the listeners.